But what if I told you that some collectors are actively searching for a 1964 no-mint marked Jefferson nickel that could change someone's life overnight? And the wildest part is it might still be out there hiding in plain sight, mixed in with everyday coins that people spend without even thinking twice. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, yeah right, another coin myth, stick with me, because this story gets interesting fast, and by the end of this video, you might look at your spare change very differently. Let me take you back for a second. Picture this. I was sitting at a small roadside shop going through loose coins after buying tea. Nothing unusual, just killing time. And out of boredom I started checking dates on coins, like a true coin nerd, and right there in my hand was a 1964 nickel. Now, at the time, I almost tossed it back without a second thought, but something made me pause. And that pause is exactly what this video is about, those tiny moments that could turn into something big. So let's talk about the 1964 no-mint marked Jefferson nickel, and why people are going absolutely crazy over it. First, a little background, because context makes everything more exciting. The Jefferson nickel has been around since 1938, featuring Thomas Jefferson on the front and his home Monticello on the back. By 1964, the United States was producing massive numbers of coins because demand was skyrocketing. People were hoarding silver coins, and the mint was working overtime to keep up. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Most 1964 nickels do not have a mint mark, which means they were produced in Philadelphia, and millions upon millions of them were made. So at first glance, nothing about this coin screams rare or valuable. In fact, if you have one in average condition, it is usually worth just a few cents, maybe a little more to collectors. But, and this is a big but, there are certain rare variations and errors that can turn this ordinary coin into something extraordinary. Now, let me be real with you. Not every 1964 nickel is worth $1 million. If that were true, we would all be millionaires by now. But there are specific high-grade examples and rare error versions that have sold for shocking amounts, and experts believe that if a perfect storm coin were discovered, meaning ultra-high grade combined with a rare striking error or unique characteristic, it could potentially reach insane values, especially in today's collector market, where rare coins are breaking records. So number one, condition. Condition is everything in the coin world. We are talking about coins that look almost brand new, with sharp details, no scratches, and strong shine. These are graded by professional services, and the highest grades can multiply value dramatically. A regular worn coin might be worth a few cents, but a near-perfect one can jump into hundreds or thousands of dollars, and in extremely rare cases even more. Number two, full steps. This is one of the most famous features collectors look for on Jefferson nickels. On the back of the coin, Monticello has steps leading up to the building. If those steps are fully visible and clearly defined, it is called full steps, and coins with this feature are much rarer, especially in high grades. Number three, minting errors. This is where things get exciting. Errors can include double strikes, off-center strikes, die cracks, or even doubled lettering. Imagine a coin that was struck twice, slightly off alignment, giving it a ghost-like appearance. These types of coins are like unicorns in the coin world, and collectors love the number four, unusual surfaces or tones. Sometimes coins develop unique coloring or textures over time, and while not all are valuable, certain natural toning patterns can make a coin more desirable, especially if they look visually stunning. Now, let me tell you something funny. When I first heard about coin errors, I thought, who would want a mistake? But then I realized that in the coin world, mistakes are treasures. The weirder the better. It is like finding a misprinted book that suddenly becomes rare and valuable. So back to that $1 million idea. Is it possible? Yes, but it is extremely rare. We are talking about a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, kind of rare, the kind of story that makes headlines and gets people digging through jars of coins at home. And that is exactly why people are so fascinated by this nickel, because it represents possibility, the idea that something small and Overlooked could be incredibly valuable. Now let's talk about real market value. So you have a realistic picture. Most 1964 no-mint marked nickels in circulated condition are worth around face value, maybe a few cents more. If they are in better shape, uncirculated examples can range from a few dollars to maybe $100 or more depending on quality. But when you get into top-graded coins with full steps and exceptional quality, prices can jump significantly into hundreds or even thousands. And if a unique error or extraordinary specimen appears, that is when collectors start bidding aggressively, and prices can skyrocket. Here is something most people do not realize: the coin market is driven by demand, rarity, and story. If a coin has all three, it becomes highly desirable. And when two collectors really want the same coin, things can get intense very quickly. Let me paint a picture. Imagine two serious collectors both hunting for the best known 1964 nickel with full steps and perfect condition. They have been searching for years, and suddenly one appears at auction. What happens next? A bidding war. And that is how prices climb into jaw-dropping territory. Now let me bring it back to everyday life, because this is where it gets fun. You do not need to be a professional collector to start looking. You just need curiosity and a little patience. Start by checking your spare change. Look at dates, look at details, use your phone flashlight if needed. It is like a mini treasure hunt you can do anywhere, at home, at a shop, even while waiting for your food. I remember once showing a friend how to check coins, and he laughed at first, but 10 minutes later, he was completely hooked, flipping through coins like he was searching for hidden gold. And honestly, that is the magic of coin collecting. It turns ordinary moments into exciting discoveries. And here is a tip: do not clean your coins. I know it is tempting to make them shiny, but cleaning can actually reduce value. Collectors prefer coins in their natural state, even if they look a little worn. Also consider using a magnifying glass. Small details matter a lot in coins, and what looks normal to the naked eye might reveal something special up close. Now let's talk mindset, because this is important. If you go into this thinking every coin will make you rich, you will probably be disappointed. But if you approach it like a hobby with the possibility of a big surprise, then it becomes enjoyable. And who knows, you might actually find something valuable along the way. There is also a deeper lesson here. Sometimes the things we overlook the most can hold unexpected value. Not just coins, but opportunities, ideas, even skills. And this little nickel is a perfect example of that. So whether or not you ever find $1 million coin, the act of looking, paying attention, and staying curious is already a win. Imagine this scenario: you are cleaning out an old drawer or going through a jar of coins that has been sitting there for years, and you spot a 1964 nickel. You check the steps, they look sharp. You notice something unusual about the lettering. Your heart starts beating a little faster. You grab a magnifying glass, and suddenly this ordinary coin feels different. That feeling right there, that spark of curiosity and excitement, that is what keeps collectors going. And even if it turns out to be a regular coin, you have learned something new and maybe had a bit of fun along the way. But every once in a while someone does find something special, and those stories are what keep the dream alive. So here is what I want you to do after watching this video. Go check your coins seriously. Take 5 minutes, look for that 1964 no-mint marked Jefferson Nickel, examine it closely. You might not find $1 million coin today, but you will definitely start seeing your pocket change in a whole new way. And who knows, maybe one day you will be the person telling the story about how you found an incredible coin in the most unexpected place. Alright, let's wrap this up. The 1964 no-mint marked Jefferson Nickel might seem ordinary at first glance, but under the right conditions it can become something truly special. From high-grade examples to rare errors, the possibilities are what make it so exciting. And while the $1 million scenario is extremely rare, it is not impossible. And that is what captures people's imagination. So stay curious, keep looking, and never underestimate the value of small things. But today, we are diving into one of those hidden treasure stories that keeps collectors up at night. and turns everyday people into accidental treasure hunters. Today's spotlight is on the 1965 no-mint marked Jefferson Nickel, a coin that millions of people have handled, spent, and forgotten about. But here is the twist: under the right conditions, with the right error, and in the right state of preservation, this simple 5-cent coin has shocked the collecting world with reported values reaching up to $1.1 million. Now, before you run to your piggy bank and flip over every nickel you own, stick with me, because by the end of this video, you will know exactly what to look for, what makes this coin special, and how you might just spot a life-changing piece of history hiding in plain sight. Let's start with a little backstory, because every valuable coin has a story behind it. The year 1965 was a major turning point in American coinage. Rising silver prices forced the government to make a big decision. They removed silver from most circulating coins, including dimes and quarters. While nickels were not made of silver, this period still brought changes in production. One of the most important changes was the removal of mint marks from coins between 1965 and 1967. That means no matter where your nickel was made, whether it was Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it would not show a mint mark. So, when we say 1965 no mint mark Jefferson Nickel, we are actually talking about a coin that was produced in huge numbers. Over 130 million of them were made. That is not rare at all. In fact, it is the opposite of rare. So how in the world can something so common be worth over $1 million? Here is where things get interesting. Value in coin collecting does not just come from age or how many were made. It comes from rarity within the condition and from unusual mistakes. These are called mint errors, and they are the secret sauce that can turn an ordinary coin into a collector's dream. Now imagine a factory producing millions of coins at high speed. Mistakes are bound to happen. A slight misalignment here, a double strike there, a die that wears out faster than expected. Most of these errors are caught, but some slip through and end up in circulation, and that is where opportunity lives. One of the most valuable types of errors found on Jefferson nickels is the double die error. This is when the design appears double due to a misalignment during the die creation process. If you look closely at the lettering or the date, you might see a shadow-like effect. It is subtle, but collectors go crazy for it. Another big one is the off-center strike. This is when the coin is not properly aligned when it is struck, leaving part of the design missing and part of the blank showing. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin can be. Then, there are die cracks and die breaks. These happen when the metal dies used to stamp coins begin to crack or chip. The result is unusual raised lines or blobs on the coin. Some of these errors are so unique that no two coins are exactly alike. But here is the real kicker. Condition matters just as much as the error. A 1965 Jefferson nickel in average condition might be worth exactly 5 cents. Maybe a few cents more to a collector. But take that same coin, give it a rare error, and keep it in near perfect condition, and suddenly you are talking about thousands, tens of thousands, even up to that jaw-dropping $1.1 million level for an extraordinary example. Now let me tell you a quick story that really brings this home. A few years ago, I was cleaning out an old drawer at home. You know the kind, full of random stuff like old receipts, keys that do not open anything anymore, and of course coins. I found a small pile of nickels and almost tossed them into a jar without thinking. But something made me pause. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was all those stories about valuable coins. So I sat down and started looking at them one by one. Most of them were completely normal. Scratched, worn, nothing special. But then I found one that looked slightly off. The lettering was not as sharp. There was a faint doubling effect around the date. Now, I am not saying I found $1 million coin. I wish. But that moment changed the way I look at pocket change forever. Because it made me realize that these tiny details can mean everything. And that is exactly what you should be doing too. So let's break down what you need to look for if you want to hunt for a valuable 1965 Jefferson nickel. First, check the date. Make sure it clearly says 1965. Remember, there should be no mint mark on this coin. That is normal for this year. Second, examine the condition. Is the coin shiny? Are the details sharp? Can you clearly see the steps on Monticello, the building on the back of the coin? Coins with full steps are especially valuable because they show a strong strike and minimal wear. Third, look for errors. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Check the lettering for doubling. Look at the edges for unusual shapes. See if anything looks out of place. Fourth, trust your instincts. If something looks different, it might be worth a closer look. You do not have to be an expert to spot something unusual. Now let's talk about that $1 million number, because I know that is what got your attention. When we say a 1965 Jefferson nickel could be worth up to $1.1 million, we are talking about an extremely rare combination. It would need to have a significant mint error, be in near perfect condition, and likely be one of the finest known examples of its kind. These are not common. In fact, they are incredibly rare. But they do exist. And that is what makes this so exciting. It is like a lottery ticket you did not even know you had. But here is the thing. Even if you do not find $1 million coin, there are still plenty of valuable nickels out there worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And the thrill of the hunt is half the fun. Think about it. Every time you get change at a store, you have a chance to find something special. Every old jar of coins becomes a treasure chest waiting to be explored. And the best part is, you do not need expensive equipment or years of experience to get started. All you need is curiosity, a little patience, and a willingness to look a little closer. Now let's add a bit of humor here, because coin collecting can actually be pretty fun. Imagine explaining to your friends that you spent your weekend staring at nickels. They might look at you like you have lost your mind. But then imagine their faces when you tell them one of those nickels could be worth more than a luxury car. Suddenly, you are not the weird one anymore. You are the smart one. And who knows, maybe one day you will be the one telling a story about how you found a life-changing coin in the most unexpected place. So here is the takeaway. The 1965 no mint marked Jefferson nickel might look like just another coin, but under the right circumstances, it can be worth a fortune. Its value comes from rare errors, exceptional condition, and the stories it carries from a unique time in history. We're diving deep into one of the most overlooked coins in American history, a coin millions of people have handled without a second thought, yet a few rare examples have shocked collectors with jaw-dropping value. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another coin myth, stick with me. Because by the end of this video, you might start looking at your loose change very differently. And who knows, maybe that old jar sitting in your kitchen has been hiding a small fortune all along. Let's start with the basics. The 1966 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary. It features Thomas Jefferson on the front, calm expression, slightly off to the side, and on the back Monticello, his historic home. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screams rare or valuable. And here's the interesting part. None of the nickels from 1966 carry a mint mark. That's right, no P, no D, no S. Just blank. And that wasn't a mistake. It was actually done on purpose. Back in the mid-1960s, The United States was dealing with a coin shortage. People were hoarding coins, especially silver ones, thinking they'd become more valuable. To discourage collectors from pulling coins out of circulation, the U.S. Mint made a bold decision. From 1965 through 1967, they removed mint marks entirely. The idea was simple. If people couldn't tell where coins were made, they might stop collecting them. Spoiler alert! That didn't work. Collectors kept collecting. And over time, something interesting happened. Even though millions upon millions of these nickels were produced, a tiny number of them came out with unusual features, errors, and exceptionally high-quality strikes that make them incredibly valuable today. Now here's where things get exciting. Most 1966 nickels you find today are worth exactly 5 cents. Maybe a little more if they're in decent condition. But certain rare examples, especially those with unique minting errors or near-perfect condition, have been valued at astonishing levels. Some collectors claim top specimens could reach values approaching $1.2 million in ideal circumstances, particularly when you factor in rarity, demand, and condition. Now let's be real for a second. Not every 1966 nickel is going to make you a millionaire. But the possibility exists, and that's what makes this coin so fascinating. First, condition is everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. A coin that looks like it survived a lawn mower is not going to impress anyone. But a coin that looks almost brand new, with sharp details, clean surfaces, and minimal scratches, that's where things start getting interesting. Collectors call these high-grade coins, and they can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on their quality. Next, let's talk about full steps. This is one of the most important details on a Jefferson nickel. If you flip the coin over and look closely at the image of Monticello, you'll see steps leading up to the building. On most circulated coins, those steps are worn down or barely visible. But on rare, high-quality coins, those steps are fully visible and sharply defined. These are known as full-steps nickels, and they are highly sought after. A 1966 nickel with full steps in near-perfect condition can be incredibly valuable, sometimes reaching into the tens of thousands. But we're not stopping there. Let's get into errors. This is where things get really fun. Mint errors are basically mistakes that happen during the coin production process. And collectors love them because they're rare, unique, and often visually striking. One type of error to watch for is a double die. This happens when the coin design is stamped more than once, slightly misaligned, creating a doubling effect. You might notice this in the lettering or in Jefferson's profile. It can look like a shadow or a blurry duplicate image. Another error is off-center strikes. This is when the coin isn't properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted. These coins look unusual, and the more dramatic the error, the more valuable they can be. There are also clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is literally missing due to a mistake in the metal cutting process. It looks like someone took a bite out of the coin. And yes, collectors love those too. Now here's a quick personal story that might hit close to home. A few years ago, I was cleaning out an old drawer that hadn't been touched in ages. You know the kind. Random stuff, old receipts, maybe a broken charger or two. And at the back of that drawer was a small jar filled with coins. Nothing special, just spare change I had tossed in over the years. Out of boredom, I started going through them. Pennies, dimes, a few nickels. And then I noticed one nickel that looked different. It was cleaner than the others, sharper somehow. So I grabbed a magnifying glass and took a closer look. Turns out, it wasn't just any nickel. It had incredibly sharp details, and the steps on the back were clearly visible. Long story short, after getting it checked by a professional, I found out it was worth way more than 5 cents. Not $1 million, unfortunately, but definitely enough to make my day, and that's the thing. You never know what you might find. Coins like the 1966 Jefferson Nickel are still out there, sitting in jars, hiding in drawers, passing through hands every day without anyone noticing their true value. Start by checking your change regularly. It might sound simple, but consistency is key. Every coin you examine is another chance to spot something valuable. Invest in a basic magnifying glass or a coin loupe. You don't need anything fancy. Just something that lets you see the details clearly. Learn what to look for. Study images of high-grade coins, error coins, and full-steps nickels. The more familiar you are with the details, the easier it becomes to spot something unusual. And most importantly, be patient. Coin collecting is not about instant rewards. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the excitement of discovery. And sometimes, just sometimes, that discovery can be life-changing. Now let's talk about grading for a moment. Professional grading services evaluate coins based on their condition and assign them a grade. The higher the grade, the more valuable the coin. A coin graded at the very top levels is incredibly rare and can command huge prices. So, if you think you found something special, it might be worth having it professionally evaluated. It could make a big difference in its value. All right, let's bring it all together. The 1966 Jefferson Nickel might seem like an ordinary coin, but hidden within millions of common examples are rare variations that collectors are willing to pay big money for. From full steps to mint errors to high-grade specimens, the possibilities are real. You don't need to be a professional collector to start. All you need is curiosity, a bit of patience, and maybe a jar of old coins. We are talking about a coin that looks completely ordinary, but has shocked collectors around the world. The 1967 no-mint mark Jefferson Nickel, a coin that in rare cases has been valued as high as $1.3 million. Yes, you heard that right, a nickel that could be worth more than a luxury mansion. So, before you spend another 5-cent coin or ignore the jar of change sitting in your kitchen, you might want to watch this entire video, because what I am about to reveal could completely change the way you look at coins forever. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever checked your pocket change carefully? I mean really carefully, not just a quick glance, but actually looking at the details, the year, the surface, the tiny imperfections, because most people do not. And that is exactly why rare coins continue to slip through everyday hands unnoticed. And that brings us to the star of today's story, the 1967 Jefferson Nickel. At first glance, it looks just like any other nickel you have seen. The familiar face of Thomas Jefferson on the front and Monticello on the back. Nothing flashy, nothing special, just a coin you might use to buy a piece of candy or drop into a vending machine. But here is where things get interesting. The year 1967 falls right in the middle of a very unusual period in United States coin history. From 1965 to 1967, the U.S. Mint made a controversial decision. They removed mint marks from coins completely. Why did they do that? Because of coin shortages and collectors hoarding coins. The government wanted to discourage people from saving them, so they thought removing mint marks would make coins less collectible. Ironically, that decision did the exact opposite in the long run, because now collectors pay even more attention to coins from this era, searching for rare variations, errors, and high-grade examples. So technically every 1967 Jefferson Nickel has no mint mark. That part is normal, but what makes some of these coins incredibly valuable is not just the missing mint mark, it is the hidden errors, the condition, and the tiny details that most people would never notice. Let me explain. In the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. A coin that has been scratched, worn, or circulated for years might only be worth face value, but a coin that looks like it was just minted yesterday can be worth hundreds, thousands, or even millions depending on rarity, and that is where the 1967 nickel becomes fascinating. Some of these coins have been discovered in near perfect condition, what collectors call mint state, or even gem quality. These coins have sharp details, smooth surfaces, and almost no signs of wear, but even that alone is not enough to reach the $1 million level. The real magic happens when you combine high condition with rare minting errors, and this is where things get exciting. Some 1967 Jefferson nickels have been found with errors, like double dyes, where the design appears slightly duplicated, giving it a blurry or shadowed look. Others show off center strikes where the coin design is not perfectly aligned. There are even cases of coins with strange surface textures or unusual luster caused by minting anomalies. Now imagine finding a coin that not only looks perfect but also has one of these rare errors. That is the kind of coin that collectors fight over. That is the kind of coin that can sell for life-changing money. And yes, there have been reports and high-end estimates suggesting that a top-condition error 1967 Jefferson nickel could reach values up to $1.3 million in extreme cases. Now, before you run to your piggy bank expecting instant riches, let me be honest with you, not every 1967 nickel is worth a fortune. In fact, most of them are still worth just 5 cents. But the exciting part is you only need to find one special coin to change everything. And the crazy thing is, those coins could still be out there hiding in circulation in old collections, or even forgotten in drawers. Let me share a quick story with you. A few years ago, I was cleaning out an old box of random stuff. You know, the kind of box everyone is filled with things you never bother to organize inside. I found a small jar of coins, mostly pennies, nickels, and a few quarters. Nothing that looked important at first. I almost ignored it, but something made me sit down and actually go through them one by one, and I am glad I did, because even though I did not find $1 million coin that day, I did discover a few coins worth far more than face value, and that moment changed everything for me. It made me realize that hidden value could exist in the most ordinary places, and that is exactly the case with the 1967 Jefferson nickel. So how do you know if you have a valuable one? Here are a few simple things you should check. First, look at the condition. Is the coin shiny? Are the details sharp? Can you clearly see Jefferson's hair and the steps on Monticello? If the coin looks almost brand new, that is a good sign. Second, check for errors. Look closely at the letters, numbers, and design. Do you notice any doubling? Does anything look slightly off or misaligned? Even small irregularities can make a big difference. Third, pay attention to the surface. Does the coin have an unusual color or texture, something that stands out compared to other nickels? Sometimes these subtle differences are clues to rare minting variations. And finally, if you think you have something special, do not guess, get it professionally evaluated. Coin grading services can confirm authenticity and condition, which is essential if you want to know the true value. Now let us talk about why coins like this capture so much attention. It is not just about money, although that is definitely part of the appeal. It is about the thrill of discovery, the idea that something incredibly valuable could be hiding in plain sight. It is like a real-life treasure hunt, except the treasure could be sitting in your pocket right now, and that is what makes coin collecting so addictive. Every coin has a story, every detail matters, and every find could be the one that changes everything. The 1967 Jefferson nickel is a perfect example of these. A simple coin with a complex story, a common appearance with rare possibilities. It reminds us that value is not always obvious, and that sometimes the smallest things can hold the biggest surprises. Now imagine this scenario. You are paying for something at a store, you get your change, and among those coins is a 1967 nickel. Most people would not think twice about it, but what if that coin was one of the rare ones? What if that coin had a unique error or was in pristine condition? What if that simple moment turned into a life-changing discovery? It sounds unbelievable, but it has happened before and it could happen again. That is why I always say never underestimate your pocket change, because you never know what you might find. So the next time you come across a 1967 Jefferson nickel, do not just spend it, take a closer look, examine it carefully, and who knows, you might be holding something truly special. And even if you do not find $1 million coin, the journey itself is worth it, because once you start paying attention to coins, you begin to see them differently. They are no longer just money, they are pieces of history, tiny works of art, and sometimes hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. Now, as we wrap up, let me leave you with this thought: somewhere out there right now, a rare 1967 Jefferson nickel could still be circulating unnoticed. It could be in a cash register, a coin jar, or even lying on the ground waiting for someone to pick it up, and that someone could be you. But it will only happen if you take the time to look, if you stay curious, and if you never ignore the small details, because sometimes those small details can lead to the biggest rewards. So, if you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about coins that could be worth serious money, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are constantly uncovering hidden gems, sharing tips, and helping you turn everyday pocket change into potential treasure. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned, because your next coin discovery could be just one video away.